changed or everything been changed or
You're seeing somebody sabotaging your computer.
One's like 3 feet apart, social distancing.
Oh, yes.
I don't know. I think they changed it from 6 feet to 3 feet, right?
I don't know.
Distancing
I
was,
can't keep
it
up
went
with
from 6 to 3.
I think anything that makes you watch your hands more than fun at a bad thing. I'm not that crazy about people generally anyway, normally. They me, so keeping them apart is not a problem either.
So you kind of like the social
I'm
distancing
not. I don't have a problem with it. Have you heard of personal space?
You don't like a close talk.
And with my loud mouth, no one ever says, speak up right here.
How are you?
They just assume that
Yeah, my God. How are you? It's a nice thing you have a pool. Nice thing you got a pool. This. What do you want to do?
My name is Nicole.
Okay.
I said still come in.
My lawyer's late too, so it doesn't matter.
He does. Yeah, I used to.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, first of all, for your attendance here this evening. We have a workshop that is being live streamed. I just got the thumbs up that I'm behind, so this time, just to tee it up real quick, we're going to get an overview from two gentlemen that are interested in a dispensary here in the town of Victor. So we're going to hear from them, and then joining us is one of the attorneys from Harris Beach to provide legal guidance to the town of Victor. So at this point, Mark and Tim.
Sure, thanks. So I'm Mark Biasi, and this is my partner, Tim Hay. And I think we're just going to start with a very short video. And some of you may have seen it. It was a piece done on Channel 13 News around what the Pittsfield, Massachusetts is seeing in the village or the town of.
Mark, I want to talk to you
Okay.
about Mike so they can
Sure.
be on the live stream.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so this is a short video that Channel 13 News did, and just what the city of Pittsfield, Massachusetts saw. They had legalization several years ago, so it's just 3 minutes long. So if you want to get that started.
With the legalization of recreational marijuana in New York State, widespread changes could be coming to the Finger Lakes region.
In part 2 of his special report, Andrew Banis shares the lessons learned from his trip to Pittsfield, Massachusetts.
It's a small but proud city located a half hour past the New York State border. Just over 40,000 people call Pittsfield, Massachusetts home. Billy Jo D'Onofrio is one of them.
It's a really good town. They really try really hard.
She's lived here for 20 years. D'Onofrio remembers 2016 when recreational marijuana was legalized in the state.
I smoke myself, and I don't interfere with my life. I go to work every day, do what I need to do, and I just come home, just relax, and and do and smoke.
Since then, she's noticed a change, both with herself.
I don't have to be afraid to be like, oh my God, is it okay if I'm going to smoke this, or am I going to get in trouble? And I don't have to worry about that no more.
And with her city.
The money that the state makes off of the cannabis is incredible.
Nate Joyner, the permit coordinator with City Hall, says helping the community was exactly the point for legalizing marijuana. There are 4 dispensaries in the city, and last year, just one of them alone helped bring in over $350,000 in tax revenue.
The funds are deposited into the city's general fund, so it eases the pressure on taxpayers, and it does allow more room in the budget to provide the services and infrastructure maintenance and other upkeep that the city needs.
But Joyner says there are lots of regulations that must be followed and hours of paperwork that must be approved.
Each project requires approval from 2 boards, one for site plan review and the other for a special permit.
Joyner says a city like Rochester should expect to get dozens of applications from businesses that want to start up. Sorting through to approve the right ones is key.
We're trying to be cautious and not just open the floodgates, so to speak.
Approving dispensaries slowly allows time to space them out, avoiding areas near schools or playgrounds.
These businesses are regulated in their appearance. They can't be displaying product, or product can't be displayed on any signage, so they do have kind of a generic, nondescript business look.
11 more dispensaries have also been greenlit to open, but Joyner says it will still take months or years until they do. In the meantime, law enforcement in the city is also continuing to adjust. Detective Mark Strout is a 26-year veteran of the Pittsfield Police Force.
I think everybody was nervous on what was going to happen, if they were going to see an explosion in drug use, and based on my experience, we haven't seen that.
Driving while intoxicated was among the biggest concerns.
We've had several accidents caused by that. So the one warning I would give is the enforcement of operating under the influence of drugs.
Strout says there has been some advantages, though. Legalizing marijuana has allowed his department to focus entirely on removing hard drugs like heroin or meth off the streets. He says, looking back, the city may be better off because of the legalization of cannabis. His advice to his counterparts in New York, don't sweat it. Instead, make it work in your favor, focusing your resources on bigger issues.
I think it was much to do about nothing, to be quite honest with you. I found that throughout my career, criminals, they'll come up with a way to skirt the system, and the police department adapt to it, and then they move forward, and then we move forward, and I'm sure New York State will manage.
In Pittsfield, Andrew Banis, 13 WHAM News.
Pittsfield County has 2 full-time staff members dedicated to a marijuana task force.
They recommend our area consider establishing its own task force before building those marijuana dispensaries.
Okay. Thanks, Susie. Yeah, so Tim and I are going to talk for a few minutes. We really want to talk about, what our concept is. I think it's different than what maybe some of the folks expected. We already presented to the Village of Victor. That's some of the feedback we got, is they weren't really expecting to see our concept the way we're putting it together. And, talk about ourselves and where we are at in the project, and then our friend from Harris Beach will be talking, and then hopefully we can take questions at any time. So with that. A year ago in June, and I'm helping my wife now. We also own a small business, Budget Blinds. We've got 2 territories here in the Rochester area, which has been very successful. And I was very successful. I'm helping my wife now. We also own a small business, Budget Blinds. Big IT. We've got 2 territories here. A year ago, which has been very successful. And I was very successful. I'm helping my wife now. We also own a small business, Budget Blinds. Big IT. We've got 2 territories here. A year ago, which has been very successful. And I was very successful. Helping my wife now. We also own a small business, Budget Blinds. Big IT. We've got 2 territories a year ago, which has been very successful. And I was very successful. Helping my wife now. We also own a small business, Budget Blinds. Big IT. We've got 2 territories a year ago, which has been very successful. And I was very successful. Helping my wife now. We also own a small business, Budget Blinds. Big IT. We've got 2 territories a year ago, which has been very successful. And I was very successful. Helping my wife now. We also own a small business, Budget Blinds. Big IT. We've got 2 territories a year ago, which has been very successful. And I was very successful. Helping my wife now. We also own a small business, Budget Blinds.
Run a business like that from a distance. But almost 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I was in a bad automobile accident from a distance. I was given the almost 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I was in a bad automobile accident, and he had cannabis to me to help relieve almost 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I was in a bad automobile accident, and he had cannabis to me to help relieve almost 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I was in a bad automobile accident, and he had cannabis to me to help relieve almost 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I was in a bad automobile accident, and he had cannabis to me to help relieve almost 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I was in a
Greg Lane he's got his own practice, Lane Law LLC, is our attorney. He may come sprinting in here any minute now. Greg Lane, Ryan Smith is the real estate agent we're using. Lane Law LLC is our attorney. He may come sprinting in here any minute now. On his team. Greg Lane with us on a Ryan Smith is the real estate agent we're using. Lane Law LLC graphic design artist Dana Banks sprinting in develop our logo. Greg Lane with us on a Ryan Smith, and then we've been talking to Lane Law LLC graphic design artist, and they have a sprinting in develop our logo. Greg Lane with us on a Ryan Smith, and then we've been talking to Lane Law LLC graphic design artist, and they have a sprinting in develop our logo. Greg Lane Client Smith, and we've been talking to Lane Law graphic design artist, and they have a front-end back as well. Greg Lane Client Smith, and we've been talking to Lane Law graphic design artist, and they have a front-end back as well. Greg Lane Client Smith, and we've been talking to Lane Law graphic design artist, and they have a front-end back as well. Greg Lane Client Smith, and we've been talking to and they have a front-end back as well.
There's a lot to do, so let's do it.
So here's some of the demographics, and I see the formatting kind of got screwed up a little bit. So the surrounding towns, here's some of the demographics, and I see the formatting kind of got around a 15-mile radius of Victor. There's about 310,000 residents in the surrounding. So here's some of the demographics. You see the formatting kind of a 15-mile radius of Victor. I was shocked at this number. There's about 305,500 residents in the surrounding. So here's some of the demographics. You see the formatting kind of a 15-mile radius of Victor. I was shocked at this number. There's about 305,000 in the surrounding. So here's some of the demographics. You see the formatting kind of a 15-mile radius of Victor. Just over 9,000. There's about 305,000 in the surrounding. So here's some of the demographics. You see the formatting kind of a 15-mile radius of Victor. Just over 9,000. There's about 305,000 in the surrounding. So here's some of the demographics. You see the formatting kind of a 15-mile radius of Victor. Just over 9,000. There's about 305,000 in the surrounding. So here's some of the demographics. You see the formatting kind of a 15-mile radius of Victor. Just over 9,000. There's about 305,000 in the surrounding. So here's some of the demographics. You see the formatting kind of a 15-mile radius of Victor. Just over 9,000. There's about 305,000 in the surrounding. So here's some of the demographics. You see the formatting kind of a 15-mile radius of Victor. Just over 9,000. There's about 305,000 in the surrounding. So here's some of the demographics. You see the formatting kind of a 15-mile radius of Victor. Just over 9,000. There's about 305,000 in the surrounding.
Kind of said this as Victor is the western gateway to the Finger Lakes, and he's right with that when he says that. It's, you know, we're just on the western side of the Finger Lakes, and kind of said the amount of traffic that comes through the western gateway down to the Finger Lakes, whether it be, and he's right with that when he says that. You know, we're just on the western side of the Finger Lakes, and kind of said the amount of traffic that comes through the western gateway down to the Finger Lakes, whether it be, and he's right with that when he says that. You know, we're just on the western side of the Finger Lakes, and said the amount of traffic that comes through the western gateway down to the Finger Lakes, whether it be, and he's right with that when he says that. You know, we're just on the western side of the Finger Lakes, and said the amount of traffic that comes through the western gateway down to the Finger Lakes, whether it be, and he's right with that when he says that. You know, we're just on the western side of the Finger Lakes, and said the amount of traffic that comes through the western gateway down to the Finger Lakes, whether it be, and he's right with that when he says that. You know, we're just on the western side of the Finger Lakes, and said the amount of traffic that comes through the western gateway down to the Finger Lakes, whether it be, and he's right with that when he says that. You know, we're just on the western side of the Finger Lakes, and said the amount of traffic that comes through the western gateway down to the Finger Lakes, whether it be, and he's right with that when he says that. You know, we're just on the western side of the Finger Lakes, and said the amount of traffic that comes through the western gateway down to the Finger Lakes, whether it be, and he's right with that when he says that. You know, we're just on the western side of the Finger Lakes, and said the amount of traffic that comes through the western gateway down to the Finger Lakes, whether it be, and he's right with that when he says that. You know, we're just on the western side of the Finger Lakes, and said the amount of traffic that comes through the western gateway down to the Finger Lakes, whether it be, and he's right with that when he says that. You know, we're just on the western side of the Finger Lakes, and said the amount of traffic that comes through the western gateway down to the Finger Lakes, whether it be, and he's right with that when he says that. You know, we're just on the western side of the Finger Lakes, and said the amount of traffic that comes through the western gateway down to the Finger Lakes, whether it be, and he's right with that when he says that. You know, we're just on the western comes through the western gateway down to the Finger Lakes, whether it be, and he's right with that when he says that. You know, we're just on the western comes through the western gateway down to the Finger Lakes, whether it be, and he's right with that when he says that. You know, we're just on the western comes through the western gateway down to the Finger Lakes, whether it be, and he's right with that when he says that. You know, we're just on the western comes through the western gateway down to the Finger Lakes, whether it be, and he's right with that when he says that. You know, we're just on the western comes through the western gateway down to the Finger Lakes, whether it be, and he's right with that when he says that. You know, we're just on the western comes through the western gateway down to the Finger Lakes, whether it be, and he's right with that when he says that. You know, we're just on the western whether it be, and he's right with that when he says that. You know, we're just on the western whether it be, and he's right with that when he says that. You know, we're just on the western whether it be, and he's right with that, Canandaigua, Sioux Valley, we're just on the west. Whether it be, and he's right with that, Canandaigua, Sioux Valley, we're just on the west.
Check out the family chilling at the house while we're chilling in the lake. I love. Check out the family chilling at the house while we're chilling in the lake. I love. Check out the family chilling at the house while we're chilling in the lake. I love. Check out the family chilling at the house while we're chilling in the lake. I love. Check out the family chilling at the house while we're chilling in the lake. I love. Check out the family chilling at the house while we're chilling in the lake. I love. Check out the family chilling at the house while we're chilling in the lake. I love. Check out the family chilling at the house while we're chilling in the lake. I love. Check out the family chilling at the house while
That's about it, who we've spoken to. And like I said, we did present to the board. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Tim Terranova, the school superintendent. Gary suggested, like I said, we did present to the board. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Tim Terranova, the school superintendent. Gary suggested, like I said, we did present to the board. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Tim Terranova, the school superintendent. Gary suggested we did present to the board. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Tim Terranova, the school superintendent. Gary suggested we did present to the board. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Tim Terranova, the school superintendent. Gary suggested we did present to the board. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Tim Terranova, the school superintendent. Gary suggested we did present to the board. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Tim Terranova, the school superintendent. Gary suggested we did present to the board. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Tim Terranova, the school superintendent. Gary suggested we did present to the board. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Tim Terranova, the school superintendent. Gary suggested we did present to the board. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Tim Terranova, the school superintendent. Gary suggested we did present to the board. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Tim Terranova, the school superintendent. Gary suggested we did present to the board. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Tim Terranova, the school superintendent. Learn as much as we can. 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 And we had a great call with him around how successful he's seen cannabis to be used as for treatments, whether it's for depression, sleep deprivation, around how successful he's seen, just us trying to learn cannabis to be used as for treatments, whether it's for depression, sleep deprivation, around how successful. I don't like getting into this because you can go to other studies and use this to argue the other side of it. Whether it's for depression, sleep deprivation, say a lot of how successful. I don't like getting into this because you can go to other studies and use this to argue the other side of it. Whether it's for depression, sleep deprivation, say a lot of how successful. I don't like getting into this because you can go to other studies and use this to argue the other side of it. Depression, sleep deprivation, say a lot of how successful. I don't like getting into this because you can go to other studies and use this to argue the other side of it. Depression, sleep deprivation, say a lot of how successful. I don't like getting into this because you can go to other studies and use this to argue the other side of it. Depression, sleep deprivation, say a lot of how successful. I don't like getting into this because you can go to other studies and use this to argue the other side of it. Depression, sleep deprivation, say a lot of how successful. I don't like
about the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act. About the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act was enacted earlier this year. As the gentleman who just presented indicated, there are still regulations. Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act be enacted. Basically, it's comprehensive in nature, and that the gentleman who just presented indicated there are still regulations. Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act be enacted. Basically, it's comprehensive in nature, and that the gentleman who just presented. Don't like to stand here and just drone on. I get sick and tired of my own voice. So the first is, of course, the mandatory, obligatory disclaimer, right? So this is informational, sick and tired of my own voice. For the Victortown Board. The first is, of course, the not legal advice at this point because we only have, so this is informational, for the application and type of thing that we're advising the town on, but not legal advice at this point because we only have, so there is a. This is informational, for the application and type of thing that we're advising the town on, but not legal advice at this point because we only have, there is a. This is informational, for the application and type of thing that we're advising the town on, but not legal advice at this point because we indicated it's. This is informational, for application and type of thing that we're advising the town on, but not legal advice at this point because we indicated it's. There are also obviously changes to the penal law in terms of, there are also obviously changes to the penal law in terms of, there are also obviously changes to the penal law in terms of, they will be the group that looks at and denies or grants licenses for sale of cannabis. They will be the group that looks at and denies or grants licenses. And this board is established as part of the Division of Alcohol,
They will
Damage
be,
and Control. The group that looks at and denies and conducts inspections of premises established as part of the Division of Alcohol, Damage and Control. The group that looks at and denies and conducts inspections of premises established as various different licenses that are available. Group that for the looks at and denies and conducts inspections of premises established as various different licenses. For the manufacture and sale of cannabis. Each are subject to this new legislation's requirements for the manufacture and sale of cannabis. All the way down to the trucking and warehousing of the material. This new legislation's requirements for the manufacture and sale of cannabis. All the way down to the trucking and warehousing. The way the licensing works is it depends on for the manufacture and sale of facilities. It's all the way down to the trucking and warehousing. The way the licensing works is it depends on for the manufacture and sale of facilities. Joe Smith doesn't go in and get a license. The way the licensing works is it depends on for the manufacture and sale of facilities. Joe Smith doesn't go in and get a license. The way the licensing works is it depends on for the manufacture and sale of facilities. Say it doesn't go in and get a license. The way the licensing works is it depends on for the manufacture and sale of facilities. Say it doesn't go in and get a license. The way the licensing works is it depends on for the manufacture and sale of facilities. Say it doesn't go in and get a license. The way the licensing works is it depends on for the manufacture and sale of facilities. Say it doesn't go in and get a license. The way the licensing works is it depends on for the manufacture and sale of facilities. Say it doesn't go in and get a license. The way the licensing works is it depends on for the manufacture and sale of facilities. Say it doesn't go in and get a license. The way the licensing works is it depends on for the manufacture and sale of facilities. Say it doesn't go in and get a license. The way the licensing works is it depends on for the manufacture and sale of facilities. Say it doesn't go in and get a license. The way the licensing works is it depends on for the manufacture and sale of facilities. Say it doesn't go in and get a license. The way the licensing works is it depends on for the manufacture and sale of facilities. Say it doesn't go in and get a license. The way the licensing works is it depends on for the manufacture and sale of facilities. Say it doesn't go in and get a license. The way the licensing works is it depends on for the manufacture and sale of facilities. Say it doesn't go in and get a license. The way the licensing works is it depends on for the manufacture and sale of facilities. Say it doesn't go in and get a license. The way the licensing works is it depends on for the manufacture and sale of facilities. Say it doesn't go in and get a license. The way the licensing works is it depends on for the manufacture and sale of facilities. Say it doesn't go in and get a license. The way the licensing works is it depends on for the manufacture and sale of facilities. Say it doesn't go in and get a license. The way the licensing works is it depends on for the manufacture and sale of facilities. Say it doesn't go in and get a license. The way the licensing works is it depends on for the manufacture and sale of facilities. Say it doesn't go in and get a license. The way the licensing works is it or industrial businesses. On-site consumption, establishment where people buy the cannabis product and consume it on price, on-site, excuse me. On-site consumption, establishment where people buy the cannabis product and consume it on price, on site, excuse me.
Important point.
On-site consumption
is a separate license.
Establishment where people buy the cannabis product
We have
and
no intention
consume it
of
on
going
price,
for the on-site
on-site,
consumption
excuse me.
license.
On-site consumption
is
is
establishment
where people buy the cannabis product
we have
and
no intention
consume it on
of
price,
something
on-site, excuse me.
On-site consumption is
establishment where people buy the cannabis product
we have no intention
consume it on price, on-site, excuse me. On-site consumption is established where people buy the cannabis product
we have no
and
intention
consume it on price, on-site. So some on-site consumption restrictions on advertising where people buy the cannabis product
we have no
and consume it on price, on-site. So some on-site consumption restrictions. No claims of health effects can be made, no kind of coupons or sales, or depiction of overconsumption, no claims of health effects can be made, or depiction of no kind of coupons or sales, no, for the adult use retail dispensary, depiction of overconsumption, no claims of health effects can be made, except, or depiction of no kind of coupons or sales, no, for the adult use retail dispensary, no claims of health effects can be made, except, or depiction of no kind of coupons or sales, no, for the adult use for authorization or allowing either adult use retail dispensaries or adult use on-site consumption dispensaries or both, for authorization or allowing either adult, in order for the retail dispensaries or valid, it has to be consumption dispensaries or by the municipality, either either adult, in order for the retail dispensaries or valid, it has to be the consumption dispensaries or by the municipality, either either adult, outside, in order for retail dispensaries or valid, it has to be the consumption dispensaries or by the municipality, either either adult, outside, in order for retail dispensaries or valid, it has to be the consumption dispensaries or by the municipality. Availed myself of, because I'm still, while opting out, you have one chance. You can opt out and then opt in. I'm still, so there is a bit more flexibility there. So if there was an initial opt-out, while opting out, you have one chance. You can opt out and then opt in. I'm still, so there is, folks do sometimes flexibility there. So if there was an initial opt-out, while opting out, you have one chance. Legal now in New York for persons over 21, and so persons over 21 that reside in the state are allowed to have legal now in New York for persons over 21, and so we'll go over. Persons over 21 that reside in the state are allowed to have legal now in New York for persons over 21, and so we'll go over. So the town does decide to state or allowed to have, it is subject to permissive referendum now in New York for persons over 21, and so as a mind, the town does decide to state or allowed to have, it is subject to pretty specific in this law to saying that a town board cannot call for a referendum on its own. So that's something that is not available to it. Pretty specific in this law to saying that a town board cannot call for a referendum on its own. The petition is valid. that's something that is not available to it. Pretty specific in this law is saying that a town board cannot call for a referendum on its own. So again, if the opt-out is something that is not passed, and pretty specific in this law is saying that a town board cannot call for a referendum on its own. So again, if you will, the opt-out is 60 days is not passed. Of the local law adopting out. So MRTA, if you will, expressly preempts local laws in certain areas. This is likely to be subject to MRTA, if you will, expressly challenge local laws in certain areas. Frankly, working through this, but this is the locality likely to be subject to MRTA, if you will. But there's a bit of it's not clear what would be a reasonable control that the town can pass. But there's a bit of MRTA also preempts local laws in areas where the legislator has delegated what would be a reasonable control that the Office of Cannabis Management. But there's a bit of MRTA also preempts up to the town to decide. And so that's not something the town can engage in terms of up to the town to decide in terms of local legislation. And so that's not something the town can governing the time, place, and manner of operation. If not, local legislation. Sounds like it's written by a lawyer, if not a lawyer, a legislator. That's not something the town unreasonably in governing the time, place, and manner of operation. If not, that it can't be unreasonable. It's written by a lawyer, if not a lawyer, a legislator. That's not something the town unreasonably in governing the time, place, and manner of operation. Town is looking at, hours of operation in that. That's kind of thing is likely going to be permissible, but if the town is looking at only be open from 3 in the morning until 6 in the morning, hours of operation in that, undoubtedly, that kind of thing is likely going to be permissible, but if there are some jurisdictions that have defined in the morning until 6 hours of operation in that, undoubtedly, kind of thing is likely going to be permissible. Generally, there are some jurisdictions that have defined in the morning until 6 hours. Be practicable, and that would not allow, presumably, a business to realize a return. Practicable, and that would not allow, these facilities may be practicable, and that would not allow, presumably, a business to police. These facilities may be practicable by, police and peace officers for, compliance with MRTA. And again, these regulations haven't been enacted, but there'll be regulations, and they'll be up to the, localities can do those inspections. The other thing that localities can inspect for is obviously the normal things you inspect businesses for in the community, which is state and local fire codes, health, safety, and other applicable regulations. So this is where this goes beyond a bit about what we're talking about specifically tonight, but there's obviously ramifications in terms of personal use. An individual is allowed to possess 3 mature and 3 immature plants in their private residence. Whether there's 2, 3, or 4 or more people living in the house, there can be no more than, and they're all over 21 because of course they have to be 21 to so possess. There can't be more than 6 mature and 6 immature plants at a particular residence at any time. It must be grown in a secured place and not accessible by anyone under the age of 21. I missed a typo there. Personal cultivation is personal use. It's not to sell to your neighbor or the guy across the street. That said, a person 21 years old may, possess, transport, or obtain up to 3 ounces of cannabis or 24 grams of concentrated cannabis, and they can possess up to 5 pounds of cannabis in their or another's residence. Again, the town can't adopt reasonable regulations governing home cultivation. It can't prohibit it, obviously, because that would fly in the face of the new law. So these again look like these civil penalties are akin to zoning code violations, and the town can pass have penalties of up to $200 for violations. Presumably there's more mature or immature plants on site than there should be. Given the number of residents, the town can enact a law that would require payment of a fine. Again, it would be a local court, and it would be akin to, I would say, almost a motor vehicle violation that way. So public consumption, again, I hit on this a little earlier. So the use of cannabis is treated the same as the use of tobacco under the public health law. 21 areas can be restricted to where that can be done, but it can't be smoked or vaped in certain indoor areas. Cannot smoke or vape in a motor vehicle, on school grounds within 100 feet of an entrance or exit, of outdoor areas of an elementary or secondary school or public library, or on a school bus. The town can impose stricter rules than under the public health law, including restrictions on property owned or controlled by the town, such as parks and playgrounds. So the town can say we want similar restrictions in terms of where cannabis use can be undertaken and where it can't. Does not apply, of course, to on-site consumption sites, because those are separately regulated by the Cannabis Board under this law, under MRTA. Taxes. So New York has enacted a 13% tax on cannabis sales. 9% of that goes to the state. There's a 4% sales tax. 25% of that sales tax will go to the counties. 75% of the sales tax will go to the cities, towns, and villages in proportion to the sales taking place within their jurisdiction. The proceeds are distributed on a quarterly basis. If there is a village that allows retail sales, then the money is split between the village and the town according to an intermunicipal agreement. If there is no agreement, the sales tax revenue is split evenly. And if the town, in my scenario, if the town were to opt out, or the village were to opt out, they obviously would not enjoy any of the revenue, because there wouldn't be any sales in those municipalities that didn't allow it. The town as employer, specifically the law bars discrimination against individuals for lawful use of cannabis outside of work hours, off of the employer's presence, and without the use of employer's equipment or other property, or outside of the use of the employer's equipment or other property may be a better way to say it. Employers may take action related to cannabis when required by federal, state, or local statute. An employee is impaired while working, or an employer would violate federal or lose federal contract or federal funding because of such use. So that's all I have. There are unique questions usually about things like testing and that. Those are often, they're largely going to be dictated by union contracts, that type of thing. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, or take them later if you could shoot me an email or whatever you'd like.
Thank you, Joe. So, Joe, we have no union drivers, but we do have, my understanding, they're Department of Transportation, so they have to abide by the federal driving standards.
Yeah.
So currently, Mark frequently has phone calls from HealthWorks and has to send his employees over for drug testing.
Yes.
And so this would continue, my understanding.
Yes, it would, yep. And there's some interesting guidance, or not guidance, there's regulations about, just the odor of cannabis is no longer in and of itself, without more, is not necessarily reasonable suspicion for use that would be prohibited. It can be, along with other observations that might be made, but that's presumably the regulations will give us a bit.
Like this town, a number of years ago, we did not set a non-smoking law within our park, so we are going to revisit that, because it certainly, I don't want to be fielding those phone calls that we don't have no law, so I know it's difficult, and the reason we didn't act a few years ago, enforcement it's challenging, there's no question about that, but I think we're better served at least having something on the books so we could respond to any resident or anyone that, yes, we do have, and we'll notify either code enforcement or the police. I have to work out the timing for the permissive referendum scenario as far as this body making a decision, because I'd rather, if there is a permissive referendum that would be the outcome, I'd rather not have 2 elections this year. I'd rather have it on the general election in November. You can call me cheap.
The legislation contemplates that.
Tim and Mark, as far as my own opinion, I don't support the on-site consumption, so that's not an issue with myself here. Then as far as the taxes, just real quick, and I applaud you, Mark, because this board's been very supportive of the James Cook Post 931, and so we love to hear the veterans, and certainly you being one. But I shared with the board that I know those neighborhood pages are critical, that towns won't turn the other way, or would not want this, or they will support this because they can't say no to the tax revenue. This, if I had my way and we were to move forward and support this, the tax revenue would specifically go for, I've identified it, first of all, and you hit it, Tim, as well, and Mark, public education, working with the library, working with Victor Central Schools. We have additional contract with the Sheriff's Department. I would, for about 30 hours per month, we would increase that, because we just have way too many commuters that speed through our town recklessly. And in addition, solar and speed radar signs. We did put one, our highway superintendent had one installed, or it's a mobile one, put on Strong Road today, but we would get many more of those. That's where that money would go for. In addition, I would work with again, the Partnership for Ontario County, and as I mentioned, with the school as well, support the NIMS program, which is a Neighbors in Ministry Services. These are senior citizens who don't have rides, transportation to doctor's appointment. So again, public safety, giving back to the community, and certainly if the village was on board, we were on board, town of Farmington was on board, I would ask the boards to allocate additional funds for additional school resource officers up at Victor Central School as well. So
Yeah,
that's my own opinion.
And I did have a call with Dyson Williamson from the Sheriff's Department, just to get the feel of the law enforcement in the area, how they feel about it. And he said, it's here, we're not fighting it, but we need to be able to enforce it better. And he said, where we'd look for your help is around education on how to use it responsibly, how to keep it out of the, away from where your kids can get it. You treat it just like any other controlled substance or, a firearm. So he said he would love to, whether we can bring people in to talk about education and help in that area as well.
So board members, have any comments for Mark, Tim, or Joe?
Just wanted to clarify it's one or the other. So you would have a medical dispensary license or on-site use? Could you have both?
It's an adult use dispensary. The medical dispensaries where you actually want to brand yourself as that, and they're kind of phasing out as they're more adult use coming in because they're more expensive. But in those facilities, at least in a lot of states now, you have to have an on-site pharmacist, and there's a lot more regulations and things that you have to do around actually prescribing cannabis, as a treatment.
Okay, got it. So as it stands now, then you could apply to have an on-site consumption, That's just not something you're interested in pursuing?
We could. I shudder at what that would do to insurance costs, but also, it's very important for us to have the support of the community, and I don't think, I think that would maybe lean some people the other way. So we do not intend to go after the on-site consumption license.
Any other questions for the presenters?
Mark, do you know if there's any legislation out there that's going to promote like in-state production, like the hops? You gotta have a certain amount, like for the breweries and stuff, they have to have a certain amount of hops. Like that?
It all has to come from inside New York State.
Okay.
So you can't, the growers cannot sell across state lines. So.
No further questions? Gentlemen, thank you. Very informative session. To the audience, thank you as well. We're going to take a 5-minute recess before we start our regular board meeting.